Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in Guyana over the past week or so. And as is the norm, we have a packed agenda of issues to discuss tonight. I want to begin by welcoming our viewers who are joining us on television from West Coast Berbice, region number 5. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. To our viewers also who are joining us again on television, but this time from region number 6, across the Berbice River, along the east bank of the Berbice River, New Amsterdam, Kanji, and of course, along the Quarantine coast all the way up the Quarantine River to Oriala Siparuta. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. To our listeners and viewers who are joining us from Rob Street, Georgetown, and Freedom Radio, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And last but not least, to the thousands of you who are joining us on Facebook Live across the length and breadth of Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, Asia, as far as the Middle East, and way down south in the Australia region. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. Share this program. I want you to share this live. Press that share button on your phone, on your computer, on your iPad, on your tablet, or whatever device that you are looking at this program on or from. Please share it so that all your friends and all your followers can join us in tonight's discussion. I want the widest possible audience. I see Kumar Singh from Toronto, Robert Rampasad, Arjun Jawahir, Roy Anthony, Roger Evelyn, Prasad Patti, Raji Maharaj, and so many of you. Thank you very much for joining us, and good evening, and share the program so that all your friends and followers can join us. And also remember, ask me questions, raise issues with me, utilize the column section so that the comment section, so that we can have an interactive session. Nikhil Sankar, Bobby Gobardan, Frank Badrinarayan, Ganga Prasad, welcome. I want to begin by speaking on the very important issue of the elections fraud trial, which has been consuming people's attention for the past 3 or more years. I have spoken at length and adeptly on the delay that has unfortunately afflicted the trial of these important cases. We are heading into another election, and these cases have not yet been completed. They are all pending before the Georgetown Magistrates Court, and to put it mildly, they have traveled a very unfortunate course, a course littered with delay and delay tactics by defense counsel, and to some extent, I will be bold enough to say that there has been some type of encouragement coming from the bench in this respect. On the last occasion that we met, I had announced that the date fixed for the continuation of these cases was the 31st of October. That day, as you know, is a public holiday. It's Diwali, and I will send out Diwali greetings later. That day will be a public holiday, so there will be no sitting of the court. I am informed that the cases have been fixed for the following day, that is the 1st of November. So, the 1st of November, the cases are going to be called. I don't know which magistrate will be present. The last bit of information that we have is that the magistrate who was assigned the matter fell ill, and you know the story about how many occasions it was reported that this particular magistrate was sick and could not proceed to hear the matters on the days on which they were fixed. I don't know whether that magistrate will be present, but what I have called on the judiciary for, and what I'm reiterating here, is whoever is, if the magistrate is not present, that a new magistrate be assigned to the case, and that new magistrate set very firm and early timelines for the trial of the case to recommence. Once a magistrate is changed, the rule is, or the practice is, that the cases must start de novo, meaning that they must start afresh if the trials were commenced. In this case, the trials had commenced. So it would be, if there is a new magistrate, for that new magistrate to start the cases afresh, start the trial afresh. Hopefully, those decisions will be made on Friday, the 1st of November, that's Friday of this week, and firm time frames will also be fixed for the trials to commence and continue over a definite period. So we are hoping that that will happen. But since I am on the election fraud cases, I should also comment on a contention which I see being repeated by Vincent Alexander with alarming frequency. Mr. Alexander, as you know, is an executive member of the People's National Congress and is their representative on the Guyana Elections Commission as a commissioner. Mr. Alexander has been writing profusely about a bloated list in existence, calling for a clean list, and in recent time has added another allegation to his repertoire. The allegation now that he's advancing is that there were many ballots cast in the March 2nd, 2020 elections in the names of persons who were not present. This is a bizarre contention. How is it possible for a ballot to be cast in the name of a person who is not present? It means that someone purported to be the person whose name is on the list. How is that possible, having regard to all the mechanisms that were present and in place at the polling place? Firstly, your name had to be on that list. Secondly, you had to have been living in the area, in the locality where that name appears, because your name appears, your name on the list, or your name appears in a voter's list for that, only that area. So if you live in Buxton, that particular part of Buxton where there is a polling station is the only place where your name will appear. The only place on the list in the whole country where your name will appear. That's the first thing. Secondly, when you present yourself to vote, you have to present an identification card with a pictorial representation of yourself. So it's an ID card or a passport that has your photograph. That ID card and that passport and that photograph is checked against a folio that the presiding officer has, the deputy presiding officer has, the ballot, the polling agent of each political party has it. So they are looking at a photograph. They are looking at your biometric data. They have a copy of your ID card, and you have a copy of your ID card, and you are showing it to everybody with your photograph, and everybody has a copy, and they're looking at you at the same time. And only when you satisfy that physical examination, then a ballot is given to you. And when you mark that ballot and you put it in the ballot box, at the end of the process, your name is first of all ticked off that you have voted. That you have voted. And at the end, each ballot paper, when they're counting, is corresponded with the tick, with the name and the tick on that list. And there's a reconciliation exercise. And this process is carried out by a presiding officer, a staff of GCOM, a deputy presiding officer, another staff of GCOM, and the polling agents of all the political parties being present. Are you telling me, excuse me, that this imposter can appear and fool all these persons who are sitting there? We know that the GCOM staff, if they have any alignment, you know which political party they're aligned to. You have a PNC polling agent there. All these people are hoodwinked. And Alexander keeps repeating this bizarre allegation over and over again in the newspapers without producing a shred of evidence to support what he's saying. Not an iota of evidence is presented by Alexander when he makes this allegation. And he repeats it. Today's newspaper, he has a letter in it. We have to take time to reject these narratives. And you will note that all these international observer agencies were present in Guyana. CARICOM, Commonwealth, Organization of American States, the United Nations, Carter Center. You had the diplomatic community, you had local observers such as the Private Sector Commission, the Guyana Bar Association, the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, the Guyana Manufacturing Association, and many other accredited observers traveling across the country. They keep saying that 15,000 fraudulent ballots were cast. You know what's 15,000? When the Guyana Stadium is packed to capacity, it only holds about 11 to 12,000 people. When the Guyana Stadium is packed to capacity, it only holds about 12,000 people. These people are saying that 15,000 people voted illegally. You ever look when the game is finished at the stadium, the thousands of people that keep pouring out? They're less than 12,000. Imagine those people, that number of people on election day cast fraudulent ballots and nobody saw, including the PNC, who had tents and offices and were walking this country with their supporters on election day. Alexander didn't know that on election day. At the close of polling, they declared that they won. Alexander didn't know then that fraudulent ballots were cast. It's only when they realized that they lost, then all these stories have emerged. You know the narrative well, but I'm going through it again because we have to keep repeating it. Alexander is still affected by the ghosts of the 1968 rigging, which his party did, the 1973 rigging, the 1980 rigging, and the 1985 rigging. Then you had tens of thousands of people who voted who were not even in existence. There are documentaries made by the BBC, by Granada Television in the United Kingdom, where the reporters walked to various parts of London where Guyanese voters were supposed to have voted. At that time you had overseas voting. And they went to some abandoned buildings, nobody living there, but those were the addresses. They went to a cemetery where hundreds of people were supposed to be living. That is Alexander's history. That's the PNC's history of rigging elections. And it is necessary, I know that you know this, but it is necessary that I remind you. He continues to spew this mantra about a bloated list and about a list that is illegal. But when they won seat majority in 2011 elections, that was the very list that they used. It was clean at that time. They won the 2015 elections with that very list. It was clean at that time. They went to the elections in 2020 with that list. They certified it to be a good list because they thought that they would have won the elections. When they lost the election, the list bad. And that has been their history. They will lose the next elections. So they have already begun to find excuses and reasons why they will lose. So they're speaking now about biometrics and fingerprinting. We have biometrics already. Are you telling me that if I, Mohabir Anil Nandlall, turns up at the polling station, I have my ID, my name is on the list, the folio that you, that the GCOM staff has and all the polling agent has, conforms with my ID. I am that person. The photograph is me. If I go and I put my finger on the machine, and for whatever reason the machine malfunctions, you're telling me that I will be denied my right to vote? You are telling me that I will be denied my right to vote? That is what I am not opposed to any form of technology. But the manual system is working. Why you want to resort to technology where things can go wrong in a country like Guyana? Where we can have a blackout on election day and it damages some computer program that causes that the printing machine, the fingerprinting machine to malfunction. Why you want to expose us and our electoral process to such mishaps? But they want something like that to happen. Anybody can vote for Alexander? Anybody looks like Alexander? So we have to keep. I know some of you may be saying, why am I going through this ordeal again? It is important that we repeat it because it is out there every day. In today's newspaper, Alexander is at it again, advancing that ridiculous contention that ballots were cast for persons who were not present. And they had an opportunity to challenge it, both at the convention center and in the court system. What did they do with those opportunities? They muck it up. They muck it up. The people from CARICOM, whom they have selected, they selected the CARICOM observer team. And those very people that they selected, remember they refused others to observe the election. They refused the Carter Center permission to come back in the country. They said, President Granger said the CARICOM team is the most legitimate interlocutor. And when the CARICOM team now pronounce, the CARICOM team is a pack of devils. They went to the court and 2 elections petitions, now on, 2, they lost. They cuss up the whole judiciary, the whole world against them. We need, on a regular basis, to refresh our minds. Remember, we are approaching Diwali. It was a Diwali night that President Granger violated and vulgarized the Constitution by unilaterally appointing James Patterson as a chairman of GCOM after rejecting 18 names of outstanding Guyanese from the leader of the opposition. It was a Diwali night that travesty occurred. Just imagine what would have happened in our country if that appointment was not resisted and challenged. Where would we have been as a country today? And these are things that you must always bear in mind. where we would have been as a country today if we didn't resist the attempts, the multiple attempts, the Herculean efforts to steal the elections by one method after another. Your vigilance, your support, your inspiration, your energy, your enthusiasm is what kept us fighting and fighting and fighting until we eventually triumphed. These people are still around. As one caller, one commentator is saying in the comments column, Diwali is the celebration of good over evil. And that is what we are advocating. It is good that triumphed over evil at the 2020 elections. And every one of those battles that we had associated with the elections, both before the elections and after the elections, we won. Because good triumphed over evil. That's the signification of Diwali. I was asked, persons are still asking about the election cases. I've already dealt with that. Persons are also asking me to give an update on the law school, the establishment of a Council of Legal Education law school in Guyana. As I said on the last occasion, not on the last occasion, but the last time I spoke on this matter, the Council of Legal Education established a very high-powered subcommittee, including the chairman of the council, the Chief Justice of Belize, the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, yours truly, and another former chairman of the Council of Legal Education from Jamaica, and the principal of the Bahamas Law School. These 5 persons are to meet. We are trying to organize a meeting. They are all busy persons, and we have been unable to meet. I'm hoping that we will meet Monday coming at our inaugural meeting of this subcommittee so that we can push the agenda of the establishment of a law school in Guyana forward. The government is totally committed to the project. Government will will provide the land and fund the construction of the building. The management and running of it will then be handed over to the Hugh Wooding Law School. Well, sorry, not the Hugh Wooding Law School, but the Council of Legal Education. Tomorrow, the Caribbean Court of Justice will deliver a judgment or a ruling in the appeal filed by Vikash Ramkissoon and Sarah Brown. You will recall that Vikash Ramkissoon and Sarah Brown were both challenged as parliamentary secretaries by proceedings filed by Christopher Jones, who is represented by Roysdale Ford and a team of lawyers. Roysdale Ford argues that these 2 persons, Ramkissoon and Brown, cannot be appointed parliamentary secretaries because they were on the list of candidates for the PPP. He argues that the same way that I argued that Winston Felix and Keith Scott, who were who were on the lists, but put in the parliament as technocrats ministers. Remember, I challenged those two persons, and I was able to convince Chief Justice Chang and the Court of Appeal that these two persons, because they were on the list, they could not have been appointed to sit in the parliament as technocrats. They had to be either on the list or not on the list. Technocrats must come off the list. That was my argument, and I won right through. They are applying the same argument because they say that the constitutional provisions are identical in relation to parliamentary secretaries. So they are using my own case and my own arguments against me. Or they have used my own case and my own arguments against me. The Chief Justice ruled in their favor, the Court of Appeal ruled in their favor, and we have appealed to the Caribbean Court of Justice. So tomorrow, the ruling will come from that court, and we will hear how the CCJ will deal with the matter. I want to speak about an issue that is causing some concerns across the country. I spoke about it already, but there is no harm in reiterating what I said. Municipalities and neighborhood democratic councils have no authority to sell lands which fall within their respective jurisdictions or control. And the laws of our country say that expressly. They require the permission or consent of the minister of local government before such sale can take place. And the rationale is simple. Nobody, when they elected you to serve in these councils, expect you to sell the state lands or the government lands or public lands. You are elected to perform a function as a councillor. We have had the unfortunate situation of NDCs and municipalities selling lands. How is that? How can that be justified? So when you lose the elections and another council is appointed or another councillor is elected, and you sell out all the public lands, how can you have good governance taking place after that? I am trying to rationalize how persons can justify selling these lands. And you know what they're selling? They're selling reserves, they're selling the dams, they're selling the streets, they're selling sea dams, river defense, river reserve, areas that is reserved for drainage. Some of them are selling even the sea defense. This is a criminal offense. I spoke about it in relation to an NDC on the east coast of Demerara, but it is prevalent all over. Quite recently at Mocha, Arcadia, there were allegations that public lands are being sold by the NDC. The Minister of Local Government was forced to issue a public statement. The police will be called in, as the police has been called in the East Coast NDC, and an investigation is ongoing. The police will be called in, and any person, both the buyer and the seller, will be charged, will be investigated, and if there is evidence to charge, they will be charged and prosecuted. This is utter lawlessness. You know, and perhaps a lot of people don't know these things, and we have to keep saying it over and over again. Between 2016 and 2020, while the APNU AFC was in government, there's an NDC called Irish Gibraltar on the Quarantine Coast. Irish Gibraltar, a big NDC. A man in that community went to the land court in Berbice and was able to get certificate of title, 2 certificates of title for the entire seafront, the entire ocean front lands in respect of this NDC, spanning about 4 villages. Those of you who live on the coast, you know the whole seawall, from where the houses end until the seawall begins, there is normally a huge expanse which is used for communal pasturing. It is used for sporting activities. It is used for communal purposes. It is where the corridor bush is planted. It's a buffer zone from the ocean. It is where equipment have to park and to drive to do sea defense work. One man got 2 certificates of title for the entire seafront of these villages during the APNU AFC time. The land court order was made on a particular day, and on that very day, the certificates of title were issued. The court made the order on one day. The order was written up and entered in one day, and the title issued the same day. The titles issued the same day. I have never seen that happening in all my life. And the chairman of the NDC, APNU AFC, won that NDC. The chairman of the NDC, rather than him opposing the man's application for the whole seawall front of these villages, he filed an affidavit to support the man. He filed an affidavit to support the man. When we got into government, the Attorney General, yours truly, had to file legal proceedings to set aside these 2 titles. The case is now ongoing before the High Court. This is, I don't know how much the sizes of the lands, but over 100 and something acres of land. One man just decided that he will own it. And the entire village Villages, as I said, the land spans about 3 or 4 villages. All these villages, the villagers use this land to graze cow, goats, sheep. They use the land to play games, the children. They use the land to access the seawall. When this man now has title, nobody can get to the seawall. They got to walk around to another village to go to the seawall of their own village. That is what these guys presided over. The coalition government. That is what they presided over. And today, when you hear them speak, their own NDC chairman supported this. It is the PPP government now. It is this Attorney General that has to now undo all of that, file proceedings to set aside. And you know, as soon as he got the title, he sold it for a huge sum of money. And guess who he sold it to? The surveyor who did the survey for him. Sold it for millions of dollars. Remember, when we were in the opposition, we were speaking about the giving away of lands, in particular oceanfront properties, riverfront properties, properties on the highway. We made all these disclosures. The entire Ogle area by the airport was gifted out by Jordan at Nissil, Winston Jordan. Up to now, he can't be charged. We took back those lands. We threatened police interventions and charges, and that's how a lot of the people brought back the lands. But they are still those who took and got titles now that we now have to undo. The population must know about these things. One of the things that I'm going to do is to invite the judge to let us visit the lands. I want the court to see what this man claims that he owns and his father had owned. And got a judge to accept that story and to give him title or cause him to get title. That is what our government inherited, and we have to be cleaning up every day. Last week I was so pleased to see the rice millers who were basically robbed by the coalition government receive the $7 million that we had to go to arbitration in France to recover for them. We had to take the Panamanian government all the way to the International Chamber of Commerce for arbitration before the Panamanian government decides to pay. They took the rice from the millers and just give it to the Panamanians and left them like that. And these guys still want to run country. They want to still be, they're around. I see they got economic, Nigeria used as an economic plan. Not one thing can they do properly. Not one thing. If you sell, oh God, are you so incompetent that you can't even collect your own money? What is more simple? What is simpler than that? You sell the rice. You know you have to get paid. You don't know you have to get paid. You just take the miller's rice and give it to the Panamanians. If they don't understand that they don't have the care over basic things like that, you will entrust them with an oil economy. They can't even do buy and sell. Taking the rice and selling it and collecting the money is buy and sell. It's what the hucksters is what border every day. They can't do that, but they want to run oil economy. They want to manage the economy of this country. Sometimes you have to break it down like that so that people understand the level of uselessness, the level of incompetence. But they could fool you because they got fancy suits and they got fancy language and they're sophisticated and they have advisors. The advisors couldn't tell them when you sell your pay because probably they don't know that. So that's one land grabbing case. And let me tell you what the PPP is doing on the other hand. Apart from our housing program, where we are distributing thousands, tens of thousands of house lots. Tens of thousands of house lots across this country. Something that they never did. They distributed what we left. We gave more house lots in their stronghold in Region 10. We give more house lots in Region 10 from 2020 to now than they give for the whole country. And these people still got the indecency to show their face around. We give Linden their stronghold. They love the people of Linden, but we gave the people of Linden more house lots from 2020 to now than they share across the whole country. They didn't build a single school. They didn't build a single housing scheme. What they did was to distribute the house lots that we left back. Let them point to a housing scheme that they did. Let them point to a school that they built. Let them point to a hospital that they built. Nothing. And all they could tell you, oh, we didn't have oil money. We didn't have oil money. But they spent a total in that 4-year period, they passed 5 budgets. They passed 5 budgets. They spent billions. Is that what they didn't spend? They spent billions over that period. But just like how in 28 years they ran the country into bankruptcy and giving us the largest debt per capita in the world, they had nothing to show for it then. They have nothing to show for it now over a 5-year period. Where they blow out billions. Every budget was hundreds of millions. When you total it, it's a couple billion they spent. Let it point to what they did. Point to one project of substance that they did. They're quick to tell you now you got oil money. It's not about oil money. They had oil money too. They hide the 16 million, 18 million US. Did they have 18 million US? Did they disclose it to anybody? No. They hide it. What did they hide it for? Nobody knows. The point I want to make is that a part of dealing with the lands, to show you how they were stealing lands and what we are doing. We are giving the people lands. They were taking lands from the people and giving it to themselves. And Afro-Guyanese were the victims. 50 Afro-Guyanese farmers they took lands from. President Granger revoked 50 leases, every one of them from Afro-Guyanese. We went to court and I won all those cases and gave back the people their land. So don't think that Afro-Guyanese benefited under them. They impoverished Every Guyanese, including Afro-Guyanese. But they took care of their own, like this man, who they give the whole seawall front to. They give the entire seawall front to in 3 villages. Fire Ridge, Gibraltar, and number 2. There's another name for it. I can't remember it now. And you know, the Hopkinsons and all the names I can call. I have all the documents. They give lands aplenty to their friends. Lowenfield got hundreds of acres. They give lands, but not to the ordinary Afro-Guyanese or to the ordinary Guyanese. They give to their friends. They give Brian Tiwari a wharf. They give Brian Tiwari a 40 million US dollar wharf for 1 million US dollars. And he pay 500,000 US dollars for it. So it's friends and families, not Afro-Guyanese or Indo-Guyanese. But let me get back to the housing. Even where outside of our housing drive, we are doing a legal regularization program through which we are gifting to Guyanese at government expenses hundreds of Guyanese, thousands of Guyanese, titles for lands that they have never had title for, although they were occupying to themselves and their ancestors for generations. You saw at Cotton Tree, over 200 or 300 titles were already distributed. Those people at Cotton Tree have been living there for over 100 years. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The rest of those villages, they are all included in the process. We are going to deliver another 300-400 more titles. West Coast Berbice, those people living there since slavery. In Anns Grove, they were living there for 400 families are about to get title, and they were living there for 400 years. 400 years they were living in Anns Grove without title. Afro-Guyanese, since slavery. We are distributing titles to them now without them paying a cent for it. You see the difference in government? And I could count all the other areas that we are working on. But I want to announce that at Walton Hall on the Essequibo coast, we will, either before the end of this year or early next year, over 200 families will get titles for lands that they have been occupying since indentureship through our regularization program. In Friendship, Pomeroon, and Amerindian community, they have been living on those lands even longer because they were our first people. For the first time in their lives, in hundreds of years, they will get title because we are regularizing that. And the surveyor is there. I spoke to him today. He's staying at the location to complete the survey, an occupational survey. And then we will start to roll out the titles. It's not an easy task. It's not an easy task. Back-breaking work. But that is what we do in government. That is the difference between us and them. Somebody is asking about what about the transport land the MMA share out to their friends? MMA doesn't have transport lands. MMA issues leases. So that statement, I don't know how that can be right. What I do know is that the chairman that they had put of MMA, they had appointed a chairman at MMA who took for himself over 1,000 acres of land. It was a big scandal at MMA. I have a whole host of other issues to speak about, but I am already up to program time. Thursday, we will be celebrating one of the most auspicious festivals on the Hindu calendar, and that is Diwali. Diwali, as you know, is one of the most ancient festivals out of India. Its origin may have been lost in the antiquity of time, but it signifies, depending on what part of India you're from, it means different things to different people. Some people celebrate it as the return of Lord Rama from 14 years of exile. Some people celebrate it as harvest time. Some people celebrate it as the beginning of a financial year. And there may be other basis for the celebration. But the universal message of Diwali is that it is the triumph of good over evil. It is a celebration of knowledge over ignorance. It is the celebration of all that is positive over all that is negative. We are fortunate in this country, as I normally say, to enjoy religious freedom and religious tolerance in a cosmopolitan nation of 6 races, 6 cultures, 6 ethnicities, and multiple religions. And we are able to celebrate our different festivals together and in harmony and with each other and with love. And we mustn't take these things for granted. As I have said elsewhere, today as I speak, now as I speak, there are people who are being slaughtered in different parts of the world simply because of their religion and their religious beliefs. So what we have in Guyana, we must zealously and jealously guard. As we celebrate Diwali, let us remember that sacred message of good triumphing over evil and inculcate that into our everyday lives. In our lives, we must always ensure that the goodness in us overwhelms the negatives in us. And that is practicing and promulgating and putting into practice the principle and significance of Diwali. Please enjoy. We have a lot of activities ongoing. Last night I was at Leonora, where the government of Guyana, through an initiative by His Excellency the President, organized a massive Diwali mega event. And I was privileged to be part of that and to be invited to speak. Tomorrow there is the traditional mega gala motorcade, which will take place on the east coast of Demerara, culminating at LBI Community Center ground. Many floats and festivities are going to be there. Artists from India and from other places will be performing. And of course, Thursday is Diwali. Permit me to extend to you and your family, to Hindus everywhere, to my Hindu brothers and sisters, and to my non-Hindu brothers and sisters, Shubh Diwali. May Mother Lakshmi blessings be with you on Diwali day and indeed on every day. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.